Alright, so this is kind of like part 2. Not really part 2 because it's a separate video, but yeah, already off to a bad start. Anyways, this is the first finished custom from this current run of customs. This is for a guy named Andrew who's been incredibly patient throughout the whole process, and I'm extremely thankful he hasn't bothered me through it. But this is the Ballast. I'm calling it the Ballast. It's got my first time working with a CPM steel. This is CPM S30V to almost zero grind. As you can tell, there's pretty much no edge bevel. There's a little one, right? You can see that really fine line along the edge. That's about it. It's paper thin the whole way down though. I think it's about 6 or 7 thousandths of an inch thick, just behind the edge bevel. So it's a mean slicer. It was cutting things before I'd even sharpened it. Just after I finished ground it, it was already cutting things. Nice top swedge, two-tone the blade because I just thought it would look best with the two-tone, with the whole black comes down. Very clean, probably the best one I've done so far as action and everything else goes. It's very crisp. The action's just how he wanted it, like a medium detent. It's stubborn. It's got a hint of stubbornness, but it's still very compliant. Like, it doesn't flex at all at the closed position. It just breaks free, but it's still very crisp and it's still quite strong. You can't shake it out of the handle. You can kind of use the thumb slot to open it. It's not the kind of knife you can thumb open smoothly. I can, but my thumbs are like, well, they're pretty tough. Like, to give you an idea, it's been a couple days, or actually no, it hasn't been a couple days. I worked on knives yesterday. This is what my thumb looks like. It's completely torn up, and all the rest of my fingertips are exactly the same. So, and I didn't even notice it. I just like look at my hand and is like, oh yeah, oh, how about that? So it doesn't bother me, but it might bother someone else because of the amount of just because of the amount of force that it takes. Lockup on it is perfect. No stick whatsoever. Just a tiny little push to get it to unlock, and the lock's at a perfect place. It fully engages the blade, but there's no excessive overlap. It fully engages the blade, but it's not a second later than it needs to be, which is good because you can get to the lock really easily, really easy to operate, but it won't fail if you spine whack it. Not that you should, even though I try to make sure my locks won't fail them. You really shouldn't do it. Just kind of trust that it's good. If you have any problem, like if you held a knife and kind of did this and you felt some play, then that's bad. Or if you can almost force it shut just with slow force, that's not good either. But my knives don't fail that, and if they do, I make sure that they're taken care of. I will not let a product out like that. It's completely against what I stand for. This knife is very different from what I'd normally build. The blade stock is actually a lot thicker than I would have wanted it. I didn't really realize how thick it was until I got it. It's 0.18 something. Pretty thick stock for a little 3.5 inch blade. It is a finger choil, which I never do because it removes cutting surface from the edge. But I tried to do this in a way that was conducive to good ergonomics in cutting. So when you have a nice hammer, when you have a full hammer grip on, and I can even get a full hammer grip on this, and I've got some pretty big hands, so it's got a really nice grip, really fills the hand well. It carries pretty good in the pocket, even though it's got a full, really thick handle, just because it's kind of light. I didn't port out the frames or anything because, well, I didn't really need to. It's a liner lock. They're 70 thousandths of an inch thick. So even if I did port the frames, it really wouldn't save a lot of the weight. The handles are orange G10 with a gray stripe and then black G10 on top. As far as I know, I'm the first one to have done a handle with this kind of bolster pattern. I did one for someone, just someone, a long time ago. and the knife was called Thresher. It had black, blue, and then gray on the bottom. I loved the way it looked. It was very difficult to do, but it just looks fantastic, and I can do some really good color combinations. Andrew wanted this to kind of match the color scheme of his car, which is, I forget what it is. I know it's a two-door, but I can't remember what it's called. But his car is in this color theme of black, gray, and then orange in the bottom. Let's see what else. What else is there to talk about? Titanium pocket clip, sculpted, low profile, kind of small, really unobtrusive actually. You do kind of feel it in a grip like this, but when you're actually using the knife, it doesn't bother you really. And I doubt he's going to use this as heavily as I use some of my knives, so he should be just fine on that. And if it's a problem, talk to me about it. I'll fix it for you. Backspacer. This is kind of interesting because this is the first time I've done a floating backspacer, as you can see. Red G10. Actually, the red G10 I ordered wasn't the right thickness. So instead of having to order more, I asked him if he was okay with a floating backspacer. Thankfully, he was. So I put 2 pieces of brass on either side, and I think it looks pretty good. Everything's finished up, nice and clean. It's ready to go. All I have to do is get some nice packaging together and it's ready to ship out. So there's that. Really, really happy with this one. This is probably one of the better knives actually, this is probably the best knife I've done so far, seeing as the other big one isn't quite finished yet. That one's really good, and it breaks a lot of rules for being as big as it is. Like, I should stop because I'm just going to start talking about that, and I don't want to do it until it's done. So it's done. 1/4 inch pivot, kind of like a pyramid or domed at the same time. It doesn't really have a distinct. This side has a bit of a distinct point. The other side's really rounded off, just very clean. There's actually a couple scratches on that. I'll just refinish that real quick. It wouldn't take long. Perfectly centered. Grind's really thin with a lovely action. And this action is with the knife dry. There's no oil in it. Let me tilt this up. It's silky smooth. As soon as you put oil on that track, it'll just be like butter the whole way. It'll be like riding on clouds. It's a good one. Fits really nice in the hand the way it is. Your pointer finger kind of goes in there. It's not like a full-on choil because your hand does kind of go up on here a little bit, which it does on me, but I have larger hands. I have thicker fingers, so I try to take that in consideration. Most people's hands are generally not as large as mine are. But when you do that, and like a little trigger there, your thumb just kind of fits in right behind the harpoon, and it really helps you direct the point, which is like paper thin, like a needle in cross section, even though it's wide. It's a good one. I'm gonna miss it. I actually would really be happy if this was a knife for myself, which is strange because I don't like knives that are this small. I like these kind of knives that are much bigger. They have more edge to them. You can do more with them as long as you have the dexterity to work with them, which most people aren't used to them, so they just default to these because these are easier to control, which is fine, and legality issues as well, but I still like my bigger knives. Well, that's it. That's the Ballast. Andrew, contact me and let me know if this is everything you want. And yeah, if there's anything you don't like, I'll change it up.